Hi there, I'm Kathy Wagner, Director of Horticulture at BCC, and welcome to Wreath Decorating to Go virtual from your own home. I hope that we will have just as much fun this year, even though we can't be in person, and I'm excited to get started and get in the Christmas spirit with you. The first thing that we will want to do is get all your supplies squared away, get your workspace organized, so hopefully you have a nice clear table to work on. You have your easel that was included with your kit, and we've got our nice 26-inch mixed greens wreath. We've got Fraser fir, we've got some berry juniper, some Port Orford cedar with the nice yellow golden tips, got a couple pine cones on there. So every wreath looks a little different. You can see mine's a little wonky, but we can always fix anything, as you know, so we'll go through all those steps just in case you have some funny spots on your wreath. I made sure to pick one that had some funny spots on it. So I've got my wreath up on my easel, and I've got my glue gun ready to go, plugged in. I've got my beautiful bow that I picked out to go with my Glitz Glam kit, and I've got my bag of goodies. So this is everything that you're gonna need to make that fantastic demo wreath that you may have seen a picture of. And next step I'm going to do is to lay out all my supplies, kind of organize them on my table. So now I have all my decoration items neatly laid out on my workspace. I've got my bow, and we're going to start by installing the bow onto the wreath. So you could put your bow in any position. I think of it kind of like a clock face. So I am sort of a sucker for a 5 o'clock bow. So I'm going to put it right here off to the right. I also happen on my wreath to have a little bit of a weak spot there. It was a little bit thin. So easiest way to hide a thin spot on a wreath is with a nice, fat, fluffy bow. So I've got a little bit of snowy elements on there, lots of glitz. So it's gonna go great with my Glitz and Glamour kit. So now that I have my bow situated, I've got a little bit of funkiness up here that I'm just going to work on for a second. This Port Orford cedar is definitely very droopy, so it's a really fun, colorful element, but it can be a little tricky, especially when it's up on the top and wants to droop. So I'm just going to give him a little facelift here and tuck him behind this other green just to give him a little support. Okay, so now my wreath is ready for decorating. So like we would normally do with any wreath, we're going to think of it I like to think of it in sort of 3 decorating layers. So you've got rings. You've got the inner ring here. You've got sort of your central face of the wreath, your center ring. And then you've got the outside edge of your ring, of your wreath. So I always like to start with the largest elements on my wreath, because by getting those placed and spaced evenly, those are kind of the most visual items on the wreath. They're gonna really catch your eye if they're not quite in the right position. So we always wanna start by locating our big items. So I have in our Glitz and Glam, we've got some great platinum colored lotus pods, as well as some sparkly gold pine cones. So we're going to put those on first. And you have 4 of these items because the bow acts as a 5th. So we like to put odd numbers of items on our wreath or in our gardens, but in this case, the bow is sort of the 5th element on our wreath. So a little bit of glue on the outside edge of this lotus pod, and I'm going to hold it on there for just a second because it is a bigger item, and kind of tucking it a little bit down into the greens. So as I'm gluing this, you'll see I make a big ring around the edge, and I give it a little swirl that catches all those little spider webs that might be dangling from your glue gun. So it's a good idea to sort of sweep those up with that little swirl maneuver. So I'm sort of imagining these going as 5 items. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to keep going with these big ones. Okay, so now we have our lotus pods on. We're going to move on to our gold pine cones. Same thing, a fair amount of glue on these pine cones because they are heavy. Okay, the next element I'm going to add, because it's very eye-catching and linear, is this really fun eucalyptus blade, glittered, very snazzy leaf cluster that we have here. So this has a lot of linear movement, So you want to look at your wreath and see, typically a wreath, when it's assembled, has sort of a pinwheel pattern to it as it was made. So you want to look for these lines of your greens and move in the direction of those greens in a pinwheel fashion around your wreath, especially when you're using linear elements like this. They just don't look quite right if you put them in, facing the wrong way. So I think that this has a really nice contrast with my lotus pod. So I'm going to kind of use my lotus pod as an anchor to determine where this is going to go around the wreath. So a little bit of glue right on the stem, a little twirl, and I'm ready to install these. My last one I'm going to tuck right around my bow because that's sort of acting like my 5th lotus pod. So now I've got that nice linear element going the whole way around my wreath, giving it a little bit of fun movement. So the next thing that I'm going to add, I think, are my copper, sort of maybe bronzy, antique gold bay leaf clusters. So again, working with that linear element, I'm going to go in between my existing eucalyptus blades, and I'm going to put this a little bit more on the outside edge. So you see how some stuff's inside, some stuff's outside? These are going to be like a little spritz to the outside edge, builds up the wreath a little bit on the outside, gives it a little bit more fullness and width. I'm going to tuck it behind some of these greens just a little so that it peeks out but looks like it's part of my wreath. Remember, we don't want to neglect the space around our bow. So as I'm using these elements and they go the whole way around the wreath, I'm also tucking them in and around my bow because you never know when you might get a little glimpse from the side. Okay, so now I've got my little linear leaves going the whole way around. I think that the next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of sparkle to that center ring with some of this really pretty, sort of a champagne glittered holly leaf. I'm gonna layer that in sort of with my pine cone. And as you're working on your wreath, what I like to do is lift the greens a little bit to tuck our decorations in so that they're not just sitting on the face, but they really become part of the wreath because they're layered in there with the greens. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is, we've got these lovely gold magnolia leaves. So I'm going to take these also around the outside edge of my wreath just to give it that, that magnolia feel, like there was magnolia leaves incorporated in it from the beginning. So again, I'm going to tuck this in around. I might line this up sort of roughly with my lotus pods. Because again, I'm trying to get sort of a regular interval of these around the edge. And I've also got my copper or antique golds here on the outside edge, so I'm kind of breaking that up a little bit with these leaves. What I would do is probably put a little glue on the top of the leaf, and then you're kind of just tacking it in right behind one of the greens that's in your wreath. So instead of gluing it down to the top, I'm gluing it to the back. Okay, now let's see, what do we want to do next? Maybe we'll go through now and do some of this copper glittered maidenhair fern, so, or whatever kind of fern this is supposed to be, but very glittery and glamorous. So this one, you have 10 of these, so I thought it'd be fun to bring a little sparkle to the outside and to the inside. So kind of we're getting a little bit of sparkle on this inner ring now, which we haven't really done anything in there yet, but that's a great place to add some glitter with whatever style wreath you're doing, because it does pick up the light and it kind of brightens and glistens that little inner ring so it doesn't become just a shadowy place. Again, lifting and tucking it in with my greens. Don't be afraid to have this almost angled like inside to the inside of your wreath, because then it can really brighten up that, that inner layer. That last one's going right behind my bow, but that little, I can see it from my angle, maybe you can't see it from your angle, but it kind of completes the ring around it. Now I'm going to take the next 5 and I'm going to put them on the outside edge of my wreath, sort of in between where the inner ones were. And that'll bring that nice coppery color all the way around my wreath. Okay, so now we have our copper on. And the next thing, what can we do next? Well, I got some of these really cute sort of snowy eucalyptus, rounded eucalyptus leaves. So why don't we add those? I think these work really well also on that inner ring. Beautiful. So now I've got some little platinum champagne colored berries, a little bit of a linear form to it. So I'm gonna layer these in. I might put them sort of in between where my lotus pods are, wherever you have some bare space, but you just wanna have them going in line with all of your greens because they are a little bit of a linear element. Lovely. So for just a little bit more of that roundy shape, I'm going to add some tiny ornaments, which can be sort of dispersed around. You should have two contrasting types of ornaments, either a matte or shiny with some glitter. But the point is that you have 5 of each, so you can kind of do an inside circle, outside circle, and dot these around. And there you have your beautiful Glitz and Glam wreath ready to hang. Great job, I'm sure yours looks awesome, and thanks for participating in our to-go kit. I hope you have a wonderful, safe, and very Merry Christmas.